So I think still good morning, everybody. Thanks for having us over here and then giving us a stage to share our thoughts and experiences. Of course, I would, before we launch our this fireside chat, we have been going through a lot of information, a lot of thought process around, right? Before we begin and launch our chat here, I would just like to get an idea around the room, if you don't mind. We're talking about a topic that's about cloud, right? So how many in this room would like to consider and segregate them as an advanced users of cloud? Can I get a hands up for advanced users? Fair enough. Thank you. That's really give us a good understanding that what we're going to talk about, because we don't want to really sound Greek and Latins to everybody there. And then I want to keep our thoughts and nuggets to that level. So before we begin, of course, I would like to introduce my partner, collaborator, who is going to share his thoughts and ideas with me on this topic, which is cloud maturity, and there's still a long way to go around. So my person who I'm going to talk about is Tosin. Let me introduce him from perspective. What I got it is that he's enterprise architect with 15 years of experience around a lot of cloud solution, digital transformations, and then the data governance. He comes with a Microsoft background. He also worked in the largest payment company in Nigeria. His innovative customer-centric approach has enabled him to successfully launch the tech design and supports across 25 countries and in numerous industries he has worked with. Outside his profession, he likes to demonstrate his commitment towards youth and then, of course, to empower them in terms of professional development in his native place, Nigeria. And he also founded a company called Analytics Africa and is trying to help skill development in the technology against it that. So that's about my partner, Tosin. And before we launch, I would like to speak to start.
Good morning, everybody. Anchal asked how many people use the cloud. I would like to ask another question. How many people are afraid of the cloud? Nobody. Good. You are afraid.
At
Good.
least one.
At least one.
Thanks
you.
for being a mix.
And how many people don't like the cloud, especially in the GCC region? We're a bit cloud averse a little bit, but if you are not comfortable with the cloud, nothing goes out of this room just show by a raise of hands. I'm not comfortable with the cloud. I don't trust the cloud. I'm not sure what this cloud conversation is about. Beautiful. Thank you. I like people who tell the truth all the time. Beautiful. Thanks, everyone. It's nice to be here, and thank you for choosing to stay here to listen to us talk. I'll be talking with Anchal Choubey. Anchal Choubey is based in Dubai. I am based in Muscat, Oman. And Anchal Choubey is a 19-year tenured technology expert. He works as tech lead in his organization here in Dubai, and he has experience in two major industries in the Middle East, which is airports and in health tech. He has written a lot of white papers. He has a lot of knowledge about human sciences and, of course, tech. He understands a lot of spiritual psychology, and of course, in his spare time, he has a lot of spiritual stuff, connection, and all this stuff. I think that's a very good one because it gives you peace of mind. So we'll go on, and we want to make this conversation a three-way conversation. We don't want it just to be between the two of us because you're going to get bored. So when we talk, we want you to respond. And when we ask you questions, we want you to contribute. That makes it better because it takes a village to make this happen. Yes or no?
Thank you. Thank you.
So, yes, I'll be starting with talking about the cloud and how the adoption has gone over the years. I remember when I started working with an OEM about 15 years ago. No, not 15, 8 years ago. And the cloud thing was a very, very, very long conversation. And I remember somebody from Microsoft pitching to me, telling me, oh, if you have the problems you're having with your email server, you wouldn't have had them if you were in the cloud. And I'm like, yeah, but the person I'm sending the mail to is sitting right next to me. Why does the mail have to go to a data center in the UK, go up north, come down south so he can read it? And he was like, well, yeah. And at that time, I was a little bit cloud defensive, if I can say, or yeah, I was a bit cloud averse. But today, I tell you I'm 100% for the cloud where the use cases are relevant and in the necessary scenarios. And I would say over the last few years, the cloud adoption has gone a long way. A lot of things that we do today, everybody here is on his phone. Everybody here has a smartphone. If you don't have a smartphone, would you like to self-identify here? I guess there's nobody like that over here. The WhatsApp we use is a cloud solution. Your Gmail, everybody has a Gmail address or a Yahoo address here. I don't think anybody has an AOL address, no. Everybody has a Gmail or a Yahoo or an Apple ID. All those are cloud solutions. And everybody knows about ChatGPT. Where would ChatGPT be without the cloud? Are you with me? Because even the technology that powers ChatGPT, machine learning, LLMs, AI, quantum computing, all those things will never happen if there was no cloud. So it has gone a long way. And more interestingly, we can see that the gatekeepers of the cloud industry, there are about two main ones with laggards like we have Azure and AWS, of course, as you know. And then who are the other players? Anybody here?
Beside Amazon and Microsoft, which are the other players you are aware about?
GCP,
Oracle,
Oracle,
yeah.
exactly. And so we see that one way or the other, all of them are picking their niches. And then the latecomers are finding a way. Even the web hosting companies are beginning to have a strategy into the cloud. So for example, people like DigitalOcean, they are changing their strategy slightly. If you go to GoDaddy or you go to Rackspace, they have a cloud offering, and then we begin to see things like the VPS dying off, and then web hosts are now collaborating with the cloud gatekeepers to do stuff. So from what we've seen, the cloud has gone a long way, and it's still going to keep going. We are not saying it's not without its challenges, but we know that a lot of good things are happening. Anchal, what challenges do you see with respect to cloud adoption? And when it comes to things around, if I use Amazon or if I use Azure, do I need to, because as an enterprise architect, sometimes a customer is afraid to be in one silo. What happens when there's an Azure outage? Do I need to have my primary cloud in Azure and then a backup or disaster recovery in AWS, or vice versa? What's your perspective on vendor lock-in and interoperability?
Good. So with my experience, whatever I have gained so far with the industry, I predominantly have been working in Middle East since 2014 here. Got lucky around to work with two industries. For example, aviation border control, and then second one is health. So both of these industries are very diversified in their how do they work, how they're regulated. Coming to the point what Tosin is trying to ask me here is that what is my experience around cloud adoption, and then what are the challenges around vendor locking aspect about running your loads there, for example. In my opinion, means I would really like to state that as a company, as an organization, we need to really understand, just like any journey. For example, let me take a synonym about Internet 2.0 here. Adoption also has a stages. 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. Where we are depends totally on where you are working, what you are doing. Okay? So that's how I look at the adoption rate, adoption strategy, adoption maturity curve. 1.0, really go aggressive, time to market is my key. I cannot wait. World is moving so fast. I'm an entrepreneur. We are small startups. We have to really get around the corner, and then we cannot just wait for doing everything around and then doing it. So 1.0, you need to be 1.0 range. Coming back, you are more than a startup now. You started hiring more people, getting much more innovative, getting much more revenue in the pockets, hopefully yes. And then you're understanding that my application teams are growing, and the 1.0 approach, what I thought of 10 months ago, 6 months ago, depending on your progress rate, is no more valid. Because then you are getting hurt by the sprawls of cost, security guardrails, and scaling aspects of it within different application teams, within different service level teams you're trying to scale up. Then you reach to the other segment. You establish yourself as a good organization to a reasonable extent, 50 people, 100 people, 150 people, everything is on the cloud, perfectly working with security guardrails in place. CFO is happy, CISO, if exist, is happy. Everybody is trying to get a rosy picture. But now you're going to the enterprise segment. Okay, there is a different challenge. Legacy frameworks, what you've been carrying, you cannot destroy them. You cannot say, okay, hold on, go off the shelf, we are going to the new wave. No. We have to understand the interdependencies of the third parties. That also another challenge in enterprise. So enterprise need to then start thinking about 3.0 models. That how do you go to the 3.0 maturity range? What is that? I'm going to explain you in the later down the line, but my point was adoption curve will go on increasing and it will keep on tickling you off from point A to point B. But again, we as a leader need to understand where we are and what we are supposed to do in that particular aspect of the time. Vendor locking, in my opinion, when I worked with border control and aviation airports, of course, I got a data which is so sensitive in terms of information. Every passenger is traveling from Dubai, airport, seaports, land. Everybody's data is getting scanned. Passports are getting scanned. Retina is getting scanned. Biometrics is getting scanned. Can we afford to have this data go out of the country, for example? Or can we really see that? Can we store this data in one particular cloud, making us all safe? No. Coming to health side, we have the data from insurance, for example. Okay, health data coming from claims. Who has which disease? What disease is being claimed for which claims? Again, sensitive data, personal information, person identification data. So my point is that whether you choose particular vendor, is not important to understand the only one dimension aspect of vendor locking, that I'm getting robbed off by this particular OEM or vendor. You need to really work upon understanding your exit strategies. Okay, not now, might be later, but don't delay it. You need to have an exit strategy in your mind to start thinking that how do I operate if I'm going to get in a situation where my existing vendor is not giving me services what I need if I want to scale, which is like a rare chance because I think most of the vendors are scaling themselves up in today's modern world. But again, another aspect is interoperability. So how many use cases you people really have discovered in your mind, which can give us the understanding that if you develop one application in Azure, for example, and one application in AWS in the same company and they want to talk to each other and share the data. Out of 100, how many use cases are these? So those challenges are there, but the majority of the challenges is not this, interoperability. Majority of challenges comes when we talk about disaster recovery or understanding the business resiliency aspect, which by the God's grace so far, I think a lot of the vendors have really put a lot of sweat and effort in understanding their data centers and creating their right infrastructures in the right category of the places overall. So that's what I would lead to the aspect of interoperability and vendor locking. We comes to the point where we start thinking about most favorite challenge. There's no difference of opinion, I believe. What is the most favorite challenge for all of you in this room about cloud? Go ahead.
We are the solution. We are the solution provider, whether it's software, mostly software, definitely. So we're struggling with different cloud providers, whether the time they take to give us the pricing, the quality of service, the quality of support, not standing to the things they give you in terms of quality and service, and putting us in the challenge with our clients. Because when the cloud fails, your system fails. Absolutely. And most people who are not educated technically just say the system is not working. And we're the ones in the back front. Okay. So this is, and I'm speaking out of, I'm really feeling the feeling because we're undergoing.
You've lived that feeling.
Exactly. We have a client that gave us, it was a beautiful success story that turned into a very challenging story due to an unprofessional, first-ranked cloud provider. Unfortunately, they're ranked tier 1 on our national providers. And wow. They're giving us a very hard time just, applying to the even slightest details. If I'll tell you, you won't believe what they were delaying of services. So that's one of the most things to the term where I was like, isn't there a 5th or 6th cloud provider who can come and rescue us, please? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's very, very nice. One thing that this now brings us to think about is two things. First of all, the resilience that we build into our cloud solutions. because as much as the cloud becomes mature and cloud providers are building resiliency on resiliency by default, security, encryption, and all these things by default, I still will suggest that we as developers and we as application designers should try to ensure that we have adequate resiliency and adequate robustness. One thing Anchal kind of left out is that in some scenarios, you need to take a hard decision and walk away. So while, like he mentioned, you may not necessarily need to have an interoperability strategy, but one key strategy that many people don't even think of, apart from security and resiliency, is exit. I was on a project earlier last year where they had an Informatica solution on AWS, but for some good reason they needed to move it to Azure, and it was a nightmare because the solution sprawled about 100 servers on AWS, and some of those functionality was probably not available in Azure. And probably the data structure storage strategy for that platform in AWS was not available in Azure. So deal was signed, decision was made, approval was received, migration could not happen. And why? Because they were just firing on V8 engines, going all in on AWS, not thinking of that day that they would have to walk away. And when that day came, it became a nightmare. So I empathize with you. I've also seen that challenge a lot where we have third-party cloud providers giving customers nightmares. And because they give customers nightmares, customers don't even know what to do. So I think as much as possible, well, I know the GCC is a very unique region, but I would recommend for countries where you have real original gatekeeper. When I say gatekeepers, those are the big guys, the top 3, top 4 guys. Where you have the original gatekeepers having a data center in your country, humble recommendation, first-hand experience, try to work with those gatekeepers. The experience is far different. The experience is far different. Don't try to work with a third-party guy. Recommendation, no sales pitch. Recommendation, try to work directly with the OEM. Your experience is far different. Simple, stupid, little things like, I have a corporate domain email. I cannot send emails to Gmail. I've seen that happen, and it's stalled for months, and they could not be supported. And then in 5 minutes, the guy moves on to cloud-provided email. In 5 minutes, issue gone. So we could go on and on.
Yeah, I think let's touch about the important topic around security and compliance, which is most important topic as well.
Yes.
People want to hear about a lot of debate, a lot of controversies, and a lot of discussions that happened in the past.
Yes.
What would you take the security and compliance piece?
I think, just like I mentioned a few moments ago, I think the security journey in the cloud has gone a long, 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 long way. In the recent past, when I say recent past, probably shortly before COVID, during COVID, we heard a lot of stories of, hackers discovered a bucket in the cloud, and that bucket had 500 gig of customer data. That data had, typically, most of the time, I would say the major challenge most of the time is customers not doing the necessary things to secure their data. So I probably had test data, or I had data that I migrated into the cloud, and then I was using it for a scenario or whatever, and then I forgot it. Or the project did not fly, and then I left it there. And then a hacker is walking around the garden, checking around for open doors, and then he walks in. But one good thing I've discovered now is that cloud providers are taking the game into their hands, because at the end of the day, the story the press releases is that there was a hack on AWS. It is the tech guys who now pay attention to the fine details to see that it was a customer fault. Or you hear that there was a hack on Azure, or there was a hack on Google. But what you now discover is that, the customer installed a website, there was no SSL. The customer stored data on a storage blob. The data was unencrypted. Now, customer OEMs are now getting smarter, and what they begin to do is to say, it is security by default, whether you like it or not. I remember a few years ago, I would set up my server in the cloud, just enable 3389, and boom, I'm working on my remote desktop. I tried to do it a few months ago. It was terrible pain. I had to now deal with just-in-time access. Because I always move around. I was in some country, I couldn't get access. I had to do VPN. It was tough. So, and why? Because the OEMs now see that the customers will be relaxed, but they cannot take chances, so they keep putting the security there by default. A few weeks ago, I deployed an AWS bucket, and I said, oh, yeah. Most of the breaches that have happened on AWS because the data was unencrypted. Let me look for the encryption configuration so that I can turn on default encryption. Guess what? The moment I clicked create, the thing was encrypted by default. And I can go on and on and on, but I also look at it from the application perspective. One thing I have seen is that when your applications are in the cloud, the maturity for the cloud space has now really gone very far. And we begin to see the ease with which you can deploy a WAF, web application firewall, without having a CCNA. You couldn't do that 10 years ago. At least you needed to know IP routing, you needed to know security protocols, you needed to know your TCP/IP stack. But today, any John and Jones and Mary or Habib can go online, click create, click configure, website address is there, DNS is connected, IP is connected, turn on WAF, enable DDoS, block IPs from Russia, enable IPs from China, block IPs from outside the GCC, and in 15 minutes, web application firewall is on, DDoS is happening, and you are good to go. Does anyone have that kind of experience here? Can I have a yes? Nobody. Oh, okay. Go try it out. Go check out your Azure configuration. Easy configuration for web application firewall. Even the pseudo cloud providers like Cloudflare, if you are setting up like your DNS on Cloudflare for a little token gives you a DNS firewall, web application firewall, that allows you to be able to handle all those requests. In the past, you needed to have a CCNA at least to do all that. Now, behind your BGP or your internet router, you can easily do that with the cloud. Now, for you on the enterprise level, this might not seem like a big deal, but look at a startup guy who has a next generation solution, who doesn't have $50,000 to buy a Cisco, no, that's expensive, to buy a CyberRoam firewall router. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Now, he doesn't have $30,000, he doesn't have $50,000. Every dirham, every rial, every dollar matters to him because he's not even gotten profit yet. Now, that guy, without spending all that, for less than $50 a month, can have a firewall running, application secure. He doesn't need to employ a CCIE. He doesn't need to have a network security expert. As long as he's smart and intelligent enough by watching YouTube, he can do all that kind of stuff. So I think the cloud maturity in terms of security, it's not 200% yet, but I think it's come a long way.
Absolutely.
So, and in terms of security, just like the last panel had a conversation, I think we should also think about the data sovereignty, which is a big deal in the Gulf. What do you think is happening with that?
So perfectly said, means in the Gulf region, we all know that how the data sovereignty is looked at, okay, especially when we talk about data around health, for example, or any personal identification data. Now, recently, by the way, if somebody has read, UAE is going to enact the law for data privacy in this year. They have launched this already in 2021 somewhere after GDPR was launched, but they've not enacted it yet. So the plan is to enact it in this year, for example. Now, what does it mean? It means the whole world is maturing, right? So as every region would. 5 to 10 years ago, if I would have been sitting on this stage, speaking to some of you in that time, we were discussing and debating about, shall we go in cloud or not? Today, we are not debating that. Why? Because we know that that's the way to go eventually, or we are already living into in different forms. Everybody has a mobile phone and everybody is sitting down and watching them. Why? Because we have a cloud today. That's why we are all able to do it. Same thing, government and regulation, data sovereignty also is learning and getting mature towards it. But, and the guardrails has to be established and they are bringing it on. So my advice and my opinion with my experience around border control data, health data, is again as simple to the audience would be that, guys, wherever you are, look at it thoroughly that which space you are in, what you're trying to do. If you're in e-commerce, you're in retail, your guardrails will be different around it, could be. Now, understanding the law is a difficult portion. Sometimes we techie doesn't need to know it to that left. And then we need to take some kind of guidance, as a help from the right people in the industry who understand it or who can translate that language of legal about data to us. That's where we should collaborate. That's where we should not understand ourselves as expert. No, we need not to. We are good at what we are, but we need to take help of the people. So that's what makes sense, that because if we would not have done it, we would have fallen down into a very big trap, understanding that we are the best, we are doing the best of the situations, what we are handling. For example, if we are putting my data in a cloud, which has a data center, not in GCC, okay, am I hurting the sentiments of any kind of regulation? Because regulations will ask you one thing, that what is not clear to you? Why you are not taking guidance? Okay, there is no exception to the laws. So when we talk about law and orders, definitely we need to be very much careful about it. We need to take expert guidance around it and then only take steps. If you've already taken something in the past, you have an opportunity to correct it. But don't sit idle around it. Don't say that I don't know, because this is not an answer to data sovereignty. That's not an answer to that from any angles, from whichever position you are in. And the kind of damage, I forget about commercial loss. The kind of loss you're going to incur around reputation, as you said, that is immense. That is immense. I think the double-fold, multifold times of the reputation what you're going to earn with your marketing budgets or, and the scaling budgets. So my idea is that understand your industry. Go back 5 steps back. Talk to the people around that industry, how they have done it. If you don't know guidance, go outside the country. Ask the same people. In your region, did you handle this situation? Talk and collaborate. And then learn from your local region aspects, and then go ahead. And then if you're already gone ahead making mistake, start working on repudiating about it.
Beautiful. And one other thing to note is that even the OEMs, the cloud gatekeepers, also begin to have government sovereign clouds.
Yes.
I know that
yes. In US, for
in
example.
the US, for example, the cloud that the typical Netflix or the typical Silicon Valley startup is going to use is different from the cloud that the guys in Washington, D.C. are going to use. Yeah. So there's the US sovereign cloud. I know they have something similar for that in China. There's the China sovereign cloud. And then in Europe, there's a German sovereign cloud. Of course, it might vary with France and some other countries, but I know that there's usually a special sovereign cloud for government. And just typically the way you have industry clouds today, for those of you who are very conversant, where you have cloud for retail, cloud for transport, cloud for healthcare, we also have cloud for government. So, like he said, compliance, legal, data sovereignty, you don't want to be caught in that web. So if you don't have the knowledge, invest in it just as much as you invest in marketing, just as much you invest in the next DevOps guy or the next CISO. Also invest in data sovereignty, and I think it's going to help. And now that brings us to how the cloud has enabled agility. The number of startups that we've had in the past few years has suddenly doubled, tripled, gazillioned, and I think the cloud is playing a very vital role here. Just like we talk about millennials and Gen Zs today who cannot imagine a world without a mobile phone. How many phone numbers did we know when growing up? But if we told our kids, I knew 15 phone numbers, you knew the phone number to the house, you knew the phone number to the office, you knew the phone number to the cousin, to the neighbor. But now you can't probably just take more than 3. But the Gen Zs cannot imagine a life without a mobile phone. Similarly, we have cloud-native organizations who are born in the cloud. A lot of neobanks are cloud-driven. SoftBank, all those many, many banks are fintechs. A lot of them are driven by the cloud. companies that we love to use, YouTube is literally cloud. Netflix, I don't have a Netflix account and I'm in the minority. Netflix is a cloud company. The Uber guys are cloud companies. I can go on and on. And those are even the big guys that we know. What of that small startup in Sao Paulo, Brazil? Or that little startup in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia? Or that little startup in Portugal that has a world-changing idea? How does he test the solution, ensure it's secure, and with a shoestring budget of $200? And he's able to not wait for a firewall to be shipped into his company. You understand what I'm saying? He's able to not hire a CCIE to do a vulnerability assessment and penetration test. He's able to deploy something right from his GitHub desk into the cloud and making sure that everything is stable. How do we do that without such a robust cloud infrastructure? It's almost impossible to imagine what life was a few years ago. And I personally feel that, well, like we've said, it's not a debate of whether we should do cloud or not. It has come to stay. It's only the best strategic approach to using the cloud we should be having the conversation about. I think what the cloud has done for us is that it has unlocked a lot of initiative. It has unlocked a lot of innovation. It has unlocked a lot of typically hidden stuff. I was listening to a podcast a few days ago. In the past 9 months, the number of AI startups and products that we have has certainly gone ballistic. Imagine if all of them had to buy a server. Imagine if all of them had to configure a Linux box. I don't have a Linux skill, but I can deploy an Amazon bucket and connect stuff, and I'm done. Now, imagine the amount of AI companies that have plugged into the OpenAI ChatGPT or Midjourney API, just like that. Now, those are the kind of things that cloud fosters. Do you think you see any of that in this region?
Yeah, definitely. I think the cloud has a really long tail effect around innovation, and without that, absolutely, I cannot disagree with you there that we are all we are because of the cloud actually at the back end. Now, what we are seeing today, any of the discussion goes without one word, AI? No. Every topic, everybody in this stage have used that word. Why? Why we are discussing it now? Not just because that it has become a fashion today. It's more importantly what cloud has done to the industry as a whole has an effect aftermath of it now.
Yes.
And that's what we are seeing. A few years ago, everybody started talking about blockchain. Why before? Then everybody was talking about data analytics.
Big
Then
data.
big data analytics. And now we're talking about AIs. So it's a natural progression around everything as a curve which is going on. We are in the interesting times where different S curves or technology is feeding another S curves, right? So we are in a very different time zone as a leaders, at the industry, and we really need to see just like industrial revolution did years ago. This is what is happening to our industry at the moment. The only thing that we are inside, so we are not able to visualize it in the way the other people are looking at from the outside of the frame. That comes to the important aspect of cost. Everybody is bothered about cost. Innovation, agility, everybody love it. You say it and I need it. What about cost? Is all CFOs worried about sprawls around how much money we're spending, what you're doing? So I think the cost effect of spending on the cloud is equal an equation where we all need to understand that don't take cloud as where part, where is my workload, where I'm doing the work. Cloud in today's modern times is not the question of where, what we do. It's more about a kind of mindset of the cloud, what we are carrying with us. It means the mindset goes with all dimension. When you're working in a cloud, you start thinking about FinOps. Understand that we are the head of a financial person, that what I'm trying to do is going to make sense to my company or not in that segment. Put your budgets in terms of segregated silos approach that my application teams need to have this liberty of budget. So what I'm trying to say is that don't ignore aspect about cloud just because it's easy, but again, we need to be very cautious about cost factor around it because it goes very easily out of hands. And in the matter of the days. Because, for example, we hire people to just take our application onto the cloud and they forget about how the cloud servers need to be shut off when it is not being used. Are we managing auto scaling? Are we putting the automation in place to shut off the servers in the night? What is the peak usages? Just a simple common examples. Okay, what kind of alerts we are generating? Are they really generating the cost to us, or how much we are being utilizing about it? These small nitty-gritties around cost components about cloud spends are really going to matter you in the matter of not years, believe me, not years. If you are not into finance side, you will really get caught up very soon eventually if you are into leadership position and you are bringing in strategy, advocating it into the market. That let's do cloud, everything is going well, we can scale, we can really go to market. But believe me that spend can go over the top at the times.
I mean, FinOps is a thing. It's big at Microsoft. FinOps is a thing. It's big at AWS. It's a thing. It's big at Google. Everybody is talking FinOps. And I think one other thing that is really critical and important to understand is that application builders and designers now need to also understand how to talk about multi-tenancy. So instead of having one application deployed for 50 clients, like every customer has a server. Oh, this application, it needs to have, every customer needs to sit on a server. Imagine if your mailbox in Gmail was on one server, then that means the whole world will be filled with servers. But now developers need to start thinking about multi-tenancy. How can one application serve 50,000 customers? And then in that, you'll be able to build things about scaling out, how to make sure that even though we are all sitting on the same application platform, there is security for each customer's data. I won't see Wasim's company's data, and Wasim would not see Mary's company's data, but it's still the same application. Less headache, less stress. Developers and enterprise architects and business people now also need to understand things like containerization, whereby, I was talking to a customer the other day, and he said, you see, this application, it's a really critical application. We've been having a lot of issues. At the moment, we are running about 90 servers, and I said, how many customers do you have? We have about 3,000 customers. And you have 3,000 customers, and you're running 90 servers. And you plan to scale. So what happens when you hit 10,000? And he was thinking about acquiring a data center and so that he can have more servers. And I'm like, well, you're doing a great job, but I don't think your strategy should be about more servers and more infrastructure. You should be, if these guys, for example, understood the concept of containerization, then this would not be a problem. Are you with me? So in terms of saving cost, organizations, customers, architects need to be able to understand strategies that help you build stacks that are able to accommodate load and also still perform optimally. I think one critical thing that we've spoken about process, which is compliance, data governance, and integrity and sovereignty. We've spoken about technology, but we've not spoken about the people. What is the necessary thing that we need to do to enable people to be able to perform very well and operate seamlessly as we plan to round up now?
That's my favorite. So I think we all are people. You're all a human, right? So that's my favorite topic around. So people part is, I think, is as important and as equally need to be addressed when we talk about cloud adoption, when we talk about cloud maturity. Now, there's a shortage of talent. We know that. Okay, not everybody need to be expert in everything, but there is experts exist, and for a reason. How can we really leverage experts' services, managing our cost? What shall we do with, one of the ladies spoke about the quality of the service from one of the service provider in cloud. So again, it goes back to the people part of who are managing the cloud. More importantly, the people who are leading the cloud journey need to be continuously improving themselves in terms of upgrading and upskilling. Okay, they need to be much more aware from the people rest part of the company in terms of what's going in this space, and then how to make best use of it. Okay, if you don't have such people, get them trained inside. If you don't have that budget to get them trained inside, get somebody expert for the particular project in, because that's very important money you are going to spend. For example, when I went to the cloud, with my experience I'm telling, I didn't have any expertise in my team who can rely on. I was single-hand man show with the people in my team who were not having any experience around cloud. And I wasn't the part of startup. Okay, so in that way, what I did is that I just collaborated with one partner, again, coming through a reference, checked that, what kind of check and balances they have done in my space, how they can add value to me, and have an exit strategy in place from day one. I'm not going to run with this partner for a particular time after it, for example, because I need to rely on my self-expertise to a point to run my operations. That's how I need to keep invest in our team, in ourselves, to leverage and upskilling them. So second part is workforce transformation. Our time is up. I will not drag it up. But workforce transformation, it means all of the people in the company from different part of the departments, be it HR, be in finance, be in marketing, sales, all are using your service in the cloud. And as the lady said, that people say the cloud is down or my service is down. They don't bother what is happening. They just say bluntly the things and things happen. So make them your partner. Make them the part of your journey. Explain them. They don't need to understand what is cloud in depth, but they need to really understand the realistic aspect of what cloud is doing for them. For example, marketing, they are only concerned about social media today, more or less. They are concerned that how my communication goes upfront to the market like this, with the best of the situation, with the best of the content. So what cloud is doing for them, what we are using for them. It is a marketing automation tool. It is a AWS service we are using for them so that they understand what is going behind, and then they should appreciate the cloud adoption with you. People who are office users, they're not concerned about security. Make security invisible to them. Don't talk to secure to them upfront like that, because they're bothered about ease of use. Be an advocate about the cloud, that how cloud is enabling them to make the service ease of use. Compliance guys, they're not bothered about how beautifully you're doing the things. They're bothered about data. They're bothered about security. Talk to them that, prove to them that my cloud provider is equally capable enough, and showcasing what kind of regulation aspects they put in place. Make security really visible to them from the day one. So every people in your company need to be talked in different language about cloud adoption and maturity curve. Then only they will start appreciating your journey, your pain points, and support you, rather than being an enemy against what you're doing is not my problem, So that's what my 2 cents about that.
That's very exciting. And one last thing that we need to know is that, I spent a lot of time helping companies translate their on-prem data center operations into how those operations relate in the cloud. I think organizations, especially those of us who are techies or who are business tech leaders, also need to invest and help our engineers, employees understand. Now your work on the physical was multi-LANs, IP to IP, TCP connections. Now it's a hybrid scenario. Now it's a web firewall. Now it's SSL offloading. So how does the guy who used to manage an Exchange server now begin to deal with mobile device management in Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace? How does the guy who was the SharePoint guy, who was chasing SharePoint farms and chasing everything, now work with SharePoint online and ensure that because my data is on the mobile phone, he doesn't share it on WhatsApp? I could go on and on, but we wouldn't live here. So I think what we need to also do is, while we do the awareness for people, we need to take that responsibility to create the new responsibilities for the people to be able to translate their erstwhile on-premise skill set into the new reality of handling things in the cloud. And I guess our time is up. Are we allowed to take one question, or we don't?
And if any hard-burning question which you like to ask before we disperse, one question.
One question?
Yep,
okay,
definitely.
that's perfect.
That's perfect
yes,
for all of
so
us.
no problem. So please feel free to walk up to us, and because time is up, we'd love to entertain your questions, or if you have any challenge, we'll be happy to do it. Thank you. The room is full. People are standing. Thank you for taking time to listen to us.
Thank you so much.
And have a wonderful day ahead.